Cameron Buriani of CrowdStrike. Tell me why I should give more money for more SKUs, namely Falcon XDR. But seriously, I've been impatiently waiting for XDR. It's my understanding you guys recently launched it.
Yeah. XDR is a recent launch. So when you look at some of the initiatives that we're starting to drive towards, the previous years have always been about year of cloud, year of Linux, year of automation. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take CrowdStrike into a single platform, much in the same way you have Salesforce as a platform as a service. A ServiceNow will be a large example of platform as a service. Workday from the HR side. We want you to think of CrowdStrike as the single stop for all things security. So XDR, it's really kind of the natural evolution once you start to look at what XDR is versus what is EDR. It's really kind of an evolution on EDR. We can talk a little bit about the same. There's a lot of differences, a lot of similarities, and we'll dive into it today.
My main question right now is there is CrowdStrike Overwatch, which I love because they are doing the threat hunting for their customers. How does XDR, I guess let's start maybe what exactly is XDR and how does it improve on the CrowdStrike Overwatch / Complete?
XDR really is, like I said, kind of the natural evolution of EDR. So if you start to look at what CrowdStrike started as, it was an EDR platform where we can get visibility post-breach, and people started to ask us to keep the agent on there. And that's where we build out prevention-based policies. So what you really want to do is you want to start with a good XDR basically lives or dies on the foundation of a good EDR. And because what this does is we're starting to say, okay, now that we have good EDR, we then want to ingest and normalize volumes of data, not only from endpoints and cloud workloads, but we want to start to look at identity. We want to look at email, network traffic, virtual containers. We're starting to see beyond. X is just a way of saying extended, right? So CrowdStrike historically, we're going to say, well, let's look right at the endpoint. But now we extend that area of, and then start to think about, like I said, cloud, containerized workloads, identity. This is where we're going to have some of our larger partnerships. And that's going to go segue into what we do with Overwatch. Remember, Overwatch is a team of threat hunters. It's fundamentally different than a lot of other platforms out there where they're doing triaging. What we're designed to do is we're designed to manifest potential zero-day incidents where patterns may have not picked things up. So as we start to ingest players from email, for example, or from IoT, we can start to get additional telemetry data. And if that goes into the generalized Falcon console, which it is, because the end game goal is to create orchestration and automation, Overwatch is going to get the visibility on top of that.
Now with XDR, is there going to be any component of a active response by CrowdStrike personnel for the client?
It depends, right? When you start to look at what's CrowdStrike's going to do, we of course have our Falcon Complete offering, but the Falcon Complete offering is something somewhat similar to what MSPs do, of course, which MSPs would then be doing responding. What we want to drive towards, SOAR-based capabilities. The end game goal for us with this is we want to ingest this data. We then want to create detection based on it. And these detections is where we're going to start to cross-analyze that data. And then we want to create the orchestration and response on that. Again, triage and detecting, automated workflows via SOAR-based capabilities. That way we can start to have surgical response and then rapid remediation. So when you think, what's CrowdStrike doing? We want you to take that data and build automated workflows. If a certain condition is met within a group of machines, then I want you, for example, contain this machine, send a Teams or Slack message, and then automatically run a PowerShell script from a saved library. Build out those plays. That's SOAR-based capability, because now we're no longer just hooked on the idea of workloads. We can take it at all of those dispersed data points, and then we create automations on it. So hopefully that helps.
How does this play into those MSSPs that are into incident response? Because I would assume now that, and I hate using this term, in essence, you're building that single pane of glass that everyone's been talking about and has been relatively elusive.
Yeah. That's a super buzzword, right? But the whole end game goal obviously has been to be the single consolidation point for a platform, a single pane of glass, as it were. So when you start to look at creating automations for MSPs, as you know, it's the game for you guys is all about reducing complexity from an administrative standpoint. How do I get the end game goal, but also how do I reduce complexity? Because I can't have my day-to-day bogged down in 6 or 7 different softwares. I can't be writing 6 or 7 different checks, 6 or 7 different pricing models. That becomes quite difficult to manage. And if we start to consolidate everything into CrowdStrike, CrowdStrike becomes your backbone, not only for EDR protection, but you're also getting cloud workload protection. You can venture into a little bit of identity protection. And now you can do XDR, extended EDR with automated responses. So yeah, it is a play towards a single pane of glass. I think we've been pretty transparent that that's kind of our end game goal, is to be that for all things security. Now, what does that mean? Where do we take it in the future? That's to be determined. What we want to do is we want to respond based on the needs within the market. And XDR is what we're starting to see. People want to take dispersed data, consolidate into one point, and create automations on it. And I think that's going to benefit MSPs just as much as it'll benefit the standard customer.
And that goes back to what you mentioned in previous appearances here about that minimally viable product.
Yeah. So when you look at the minimally viable product, that's something that if we look at just getting the protect-based angle, CrowdStrike has so many products. When you look at our go-to-market strategy, the majority of our clients have adopted a bundle of our products as opposed to the minimally viable product known as just Protect. Protect is designed to go on workloads where it's a rip and replace of a legacy solution. People want to get modern security. They see the breaches on the news and they don't want to be involved in it. However, there may be a financial consideration to be had that may be cost prohibitive. We all know how it is. You just look there and you're going to say, well, yeah, that's nice. But I too would like a jacuzzi, but I'm not going to shell out $15,000 to get it. So let's get you the jacuzzi, as it were, in a minimally viable model, get you up to speed, get you secure. And then once you're starting to provide those core services, now we're going to say, okay, here's how you do a holistic security practice.
What does the onboarding process look like, not just for the MSSP, but also for, let's say, the enterprise that wants to come to CrowdStrike XDR?
So it depends, right? I'd encourage everybody to go check out the partner channel. You'll need to actually go look at the CrowdStrike alliances, the individuals of whom are actually going to directly partner with us. So that's going to be called the Crowd XDR Alliance. That's how we're going to give you those partnerships for extended detection and response. And go check on there. We want to make sure that you actually have partners that are currently aligned with what we're doing. Again, think about cloud, think about email gateway, IoT, identity access management. Those are things we want to consolidate. So if you're an enterprise, you're saying, hey, this sounds good. How do I migrate? Go check out that website. Make sure that your partners are on there. Next thing, always contact your local solutions architect or sales engineer, and they'll walk you through the process. It's going to be something that we're going to iterate over time. The MVP-based model, minimally viable product or minimally viable protection, also goes into development model, which is MVP-based development, where we released a minimally viable product to market, not to say it's not viable, but what we want to do is we want to iterate based on market demands, because we're not hubristic enough to assume that, well, I know what the customer wants. There's a long roundabout way of saying is the onboarding process, so long as you have approved partners, work with your SE, should be pretty straightforward. But outside those approved partners, we still want to hear. So if you say, hey, I'm working with these guys for email, it's a pretty big deal to me. Shoot it back over to your rep. They'll work with you. We want that feedback. That's how we're going to expand that alliances.
What are the odds that CrowdStrike gets into the email protection as far as the API goes, not necessarily a gateway?
You pulled my feet to the fire. You obviously know I can't speak to that, but I'll tell you, it would make intellectual sense, right? If we want to be a platform as a service, it would then in theory make sense that you would attempt to find the most important security vectors and start to consolidate under it. I don't know if that's what we're doing. I have no visibility into that. And if I did, I wouldn't be able to say it. But if I'm saying we want to be a platform as a service, when you go listen to George Kurtz and you listen to Bert talk about what we're doing on our earnings calls, and when they go to, Mad Money and all those places, they're always talking about platform as a service. They're always talking about consolidating under one centralized plane of management, typically one agent. And it would only make sense that if you wanted to do that play, that may not be entirely out of scope. But again, can't speak on that too.
The reason I asked is because I see that as the one major hole I have in my security portfolio. I do have coverage on it, but it's very much SMB type vendors. It's not, a big enterprise player such as yourself or any company of your size and scale. I'm not saying an SMB type vendor can't fill that need properly, but I would rather have CrowdStrike going through my emails and saying, hey, this is phishing, this is a bad link or what have you, and overlay, or because I use a cloud email, maybe there's an API give, especially with Humio or even your XDR platform. I think it would be an interesting thing.
No, and you're not the only person to think that, right? When I talk to a lot of MSPs, they're going to say, for me, two more important things, obviously endpoint, but they always come to me and say, I want to do something on the network layer. What can you guys do on the net? That's probably the most common. And the second most common is email gateway. And I'm with you. If I were to do an MSP product, I would be focused pretty heavy on email. because that's honestly one of the most common entry vectors. You and I both know that.
I think it's the easiest vector for the bad guys.
It's literally the easiest. I mean, you can figure out email structures so simple, right? Some one person posts their email structure, first dot last name, or first initial last name at. Once you get that, you have access to everyone's emails. You just go to LinkedIn, right? You go to LinkedIn, you find somebody, for whatever reason you think isn't going to be too tech savvy. Shoot them off an email and said, hey, this is the Microsoft 365 team. I need you to click this link and type in your credentials so we can make sure you're authorized to continue working today. And someone's going to do it.
9 out of 10 times.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 times. So someone's going to do it. Again, going back to the Crowd Alliances page, there are email providers that we work with, or email security providers, that we want to feed into the XDR, because that's the type of data points that we want to start to feed in. Hey, if someone's doing something like that, think about SOAR-based capabilities. If we get visibility, this is a classic XDR use case, right? We get visibility that you just got an email that's suspicious like that because you're using XDR. Guess what? Create automations, automatically contain that machine. So that happens, contain that machine, shut them down, and get that user off the network, right? It doesn't matter if it impedes their productivity or their workflow. Maybe it does, but in this case, it would be a Pyrrhic victory to allow them to keep working and continue to enter in their credentials. Personally, I would create an automation through CrowdStrike, SOAR-based in XDR, where we saw malicious emails in that nature that appear to be social engineering or spear phishing. Contain the machine, run a script that may just lock them out, and then take responsive action on the back end. That's a generalized use case of what you can do with the alliance on that.
You just mentioned that you have not a lot, you have some MSSPs that ask you, what can CrowdStrike do on the network layer? My question there would be, how, if any, impact would XDR have on the Spotlight feed, the Discover feature?
Discover is an IT hygiene feature. Interesting question. Discover has 3 facets, really. And I'm not the product manager for Discover. I know the guy. I can connect you with him if you like. Discover has holistic asset management, so you can understand managed and unmanaged assets. The common use case for that, of course, is identifying machines that do not have CrowdStrike installed on them, but potentially could. Then you have applications, so you can identify the applications, least commonly used apps. And then you have user discovery. So when you start to look at IoT, right? IoT feeds into the notion of asset management. So if we start to go in and we're pulling in a lot of IoT data, that's going to start to populate on assets that potentially be unmanaged, but also unsupported assets, which is largely what you would see in IoT. It's gonna be like credit card readers, biometric scanners, your washing machine. We just got a new washing machine and it has Wi-Fi capability. Why does that need to be a thing? I got new hearing aids.
Flooding as a service.
Dude, yeah, loading as a service. I got new hearing aids. I tried to get them without Bluetooth and without wireless, and it couldn't happen. I called the Danish manufacturers and I was like, hey, I don't want Bluetooth and I don't want wireless on this. And they thought I was an insane man. But the point is, my hearing aids now show up because they have wireless enabled, and I can do nothing about it or just accept being deaf. So those are IoT, right? My point is, yes, if you take IoT, you can feed that into similar data sets in which are being leveraged for Discover. But as of now, I don't think it's going to feed natively into the UI. You would just then have to, of course, run your own Splunk-based queries in order to yield those results. A lot of the benefit, of course, with Discover is the pre-built UI, which is going to give you those immediate insights. Being able to ingest some of those IoT-based data fields and then get the immediate insights on the pre-built queries is something that I'm not entirely sure exists today, nor when it's going to be released on the roadmap. But suffice to say, if you can run those custom-based Splunk queries, you can save your own dashboards, you'll be able to get that data.
When is XDR going live, or is it live already?
Yeah, so definitely contact your local rep on that. XDR is something that we're actively in the process of rolling out. For the MSP space right now, we're not entirely live. So, you already know that. That's why we're talking about it now. Right. But again, for us with multi-tenancy, we have to start to consider more than just the single use case. When we look at multi-tenancy, we're in the flight control-based architecture, which is really the elite version of our architecture. You don't have to pay anything additional to get that. We just give it to you. We'll structure it with you. But we need to start to look at concerns of management at scale. How do we take this with, 80 different customers, 150 different customers? And how do I throw all that data up to the parent as well as create management for the parent down to flow? So anytime we get new modules, flight control-based features are always more difficult to implement. At scale, multi-tenancy is where we live. Right now, it's just not at the stage where we want to release it to MSSPs. So we need to iterate on that. But yeah, I don't have a hard timeline on that one, unfortunately.
No, the reason I ask is not necessarily for me in the MSP space that I live in. It's more so because our viewers, listeners of this podcast are typically in the enterprise or the SMB. So for them, if I am not their MSSP, I would say go to Cameron directly, or go to CrowdStrike directly, or just go to me, whichever. We'll figure out a way to resell it to you. But just for the enterprise and for the SMB, is it available if someone were to call in and say, hey, we need to get going with XDR, or we wanted to get going?
So call in, work with your local rep. If you don't have one, then of course, obviously, just, you can email and they'll give you someone. But just work. If you're in an enterprise, you probably have a point of contact. You probably have an SC, which is a guy like me, but on the enterprise side, and they'll work with you to get up and running. Enterprise is typically first to market for features because, again, we don't have to make sure it's flight control aware. So if you're sitting there and you're saying, hey, I want to hear more about this, perfect. Either call into CrowdStrike or work internally to find that individual. It'll just be easier, right? If there's already a point of contact, there's already an SC involved, just going to have to talk to them anyways. So that's what I would personally. Because
I know a couple of people in the enterprise that are looking at you, and they've been waiting to move over to CrowdStrike just once XDR went up.
It's, I want to just tell you, go out and buy it. But the thing is, we just got to be careful with different architectures, right? You may be on GovCloud. This individual may be on eCloud. There's so many nuances that it's difficult to speak in generalizations. It's always going to be the best play to reach out because you may have a very specific architecture, specific need, specific partners. It's like people, right? Everybody's different. It's hard to speak in generalization, but yes, we want to go to market with this. That's why we're, aggressively marketing, talking to it. Best play is always going to be to find your rep because it's not just like, he doesn't want to answer it directly. It's not that. There's so many architectural nuances that I don't want to steer anybody wrong because they may be in a certain type of regulated cloud and that regulated cloud may prohibit them from having certain features and it just gets weird.
Is XDR in the GovCloud yet?
I'm actually not sure about that.
Okay.
Releases usually go to US2 first. US2 is going to be our commercial-based cloud.
Oh, you guys got to go to US1 because that's where I
US1 also gets the releases. US2 and US1 are our commercial clouds, so those are our go-to clouds. That's a bit deceptive in the nature of what we call it US1 versus US2, right? That's basically just back-end terminology. What it basically means is US, quote unquote, it's colloquial for commercial. Unless you need specific EU-based regulations having to do with, very specific working with state and local governments and the Germans, they have their Bundesstaats, I think is how you pronounce it. They have very specific regulations as well. So if you get into those, you're going to need the EU cloud. GovClouds where you want to start to do FedRAMP stuff. You want to work with federal government. You want to work within, that type of space. FedRAMP is what that's provided for. Don't think of the US clouds as specifically US. I want you to think of it as commercial clouds, which is what they truly are.
How does Humio play into XDR? Because that was a big acquisition CrowdStrike did maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah, it was pretty recently. Humio is actually a CrowdStrike company. So Humio is very interesting in the sense that when we look at other acquisitions we've done historically, preempt security, things that we've done with sandboxes and whatnot. What we've done is we've actually integrated them into the platform and we've created this one single pane of glass. And Humio is in a direction of a single pane of glass, but Humio is where it's a CrowdStrike company. So Humio is going to stay as its own kind of business unit, as it were. And then, of course, there's been a lot of great leaders within our company who are now working on that Humio side to go to market with that. What does that mean? To be honest, I'm not a Humio expert. We would have to want to get you actually a Humio individual involved. But that goes back to that notion. If you're thinking like, hey, Humio, I want to take this dispersed data source. I then want to create those actionable insights and then drive on them. You want to do that info that Humio is bringing. Humio is a beast. It's got a lot of data. It's got a lot of power. This is going from something where you may be driving a standard, I don't know, Ford pickup. And now you're going to an F-150 supercharged. I mean, it is a 9-day difference. So I would encourage you, there's actually going to be a Humio point of contact that you'll get involved with. So if you're interested in Humio, work with that rep, tell them I want to talk about Humio directly. They are going aggressively to market with Humio. So if you're enterprise, you're listening to this, you're saying, hey, Humio might be interesting. Yeah, that's an aggressive to market play. You're more than welcome to reach out on that.
Going back to XDR, you mentioned that we're pulling in all these different data sources from the Crowd Alliance partners. What does the workflow look like after the integration? Are we meant to be spending most of our time on the XDR platform with minimal work with the source platforms that are providing the data to XDR?
It depends, right? Let's go with the MSP use case. Just keep it simple, and then I'll talk an enterprise use case. With an MSP use case, we basically want you to use CrowdStrike as a single pane of glass where we want you in CrowdStrike specifically. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't log into, for example, I don't know, you want to get some Okta-based data, or you want to go into Google Cloud, or you want to do Mimecast. You can log into that still and see that type of data. But what we want to do is we want to get it all consolidated under CrowdStrike, and then we want you to start to create automations on it. SOAR-based capabilities with XDR, that's really where we're driving towards. Start to think about holistic data, automated plays. That's the bread and butter. Bring in all that data, because right now, you know the SOAR-based capabilities. If I get a detection on this group of machines and it meets a certain severity, I want to contain it and then send a Slack message. Okay, cool. That's fun, right? Maybe run a PowerShell script, maybe do some other creative stuff. But like I said earlier with that use case, how do I stop social engineering? How do I go take dispersed data from the cloud? How do I go in from IoT and create actions on that? So once that data is in there, I want you to start to think about, what are these plays I want to make? SOAR-based plays. Falcon Fusion or workflows is available to all customers with Insight. That's not anything, to my understanding, for partners that we're doing. We're not charging our partners for that. You'd have to go talk directly with your rep if that's the case, but we're giving everybody Falcon Fusion and Falcon workflows. Go in there, create the ideas of the plays, and start to think, hey, this is what I'm just getting with EDR. Imagine if I got in all this additional data. There's different layers I can create automations on that frees you from having to take those administrative actions. So that's what I want MSPs to do. I want MSPs to take it all in there, create automation and response, and I want to get them out of console. My end game goals for you guys is to keep your customers secure, stop breaches, and I want you to focus on going to market. I don't want you in the UI too much. I don't want you messing down unless, of course, you have to. I want to free your time, and I want you to get you in front of other customers so you can expand your business and you can keep them secure. That's the goal with SOAR-based capabilities.
So with all the SOAR-based capability, how does that relate, if at all, to the recent announcement between CrowdStrike and Mandiant?
Yeah. So
their mission, hold on, this is going to be a big one, with their mission-focused strategic partnership to protect organizations against cyber threats, directly from the website.
Yeah. So Mandiant's a big one. Big shout out to my manager, Leo. Leo's the one who really spearheaded that in conjunction with our partnerships team. That was a huge thing for our solution architects team. And that really starts to show that with Google specifically, we're committed to partnering with them. Obviously, we have GCP-based coverage, Mandiant, their acquisition. We're now partnering with Mandiant. So these are signs of collaboration, right? There are other vendors, key cloud-based vendors, IR vendors that may not be so keen on collaborating. That obviously can change. Those are dynamic situations. But when we start to think about that partnership, Mandiant, that says, hey, we like your EDR. We like your visibility. We want to take that visibility. We want to use existing partnerships, and then we want to create that service on it. So for me, when I see that just increased collaboration, and that validates what we're doing, at least from a visibility standpoint.
I wish I saw more collaboration in the MSSP space. It's very much a dog-eat-dog world. And I think the nature of threats, I don't want to say you have to be, the nature of today's threats, we should be collaborating more with everyone to get those increased data points, get those increased perspectives, and put together a solution package that, as you said, really secures the end client, because that's the job at the end of the day. It shouldn't be ego management or anything like that.
No, you're right. I mean, we're all playing on the same team. Too often, I feel like you get the effect of, I just feel like you're right about the dog-eat-dog notion. I feel like everybody's trying to kind of get out for themselves. Like, oh, we're doing this, they want to keep it siloed. It's a scarcity mindset, right? Like, well, I want to keep my customers this and this and this. Start to think about it in an abundance notion. There's always going to be people to protect. There's always going to be things we can learn. Why are we looking at this in this restricted mindset? Why do we take this and say, here are my constraints and I'm going to work within those constraints? You need to start thinking about, how do I work? How do I collaborate? How do I expand? By you bringing that out there, it's going to start to attract it. And again, it's not like it's the enemy. We're all working on the same page. It's just like, with regular life. You go out and about, you say, oh, my neighbor's this, my neighbor's that, the local guy's this, the local guy's that. I go downtown. That's not what we should be worried about. Not everyone's perfect. We want to start to say, hey, I know you're not, perfect MSP. I'm not a perfect MSP, but we can both learn something from each other, because at the end of the day, there's a larger goal. And that's keeping secure and then keeping your clients safe. And we can all expand on that. And you work hand in hand with some great MSSPs, and you guys got a great business. It's expanding. You guys got a knowledge share. That's what you want, right? It's so much more fulfilling than what I've seen partners where they work in silo. It's very bitter. It's very constrained. I'm not a big fan of, working with them. Obviously you need to, but it would be so much more better if they were open to a knowledge share, because it's more conducive.
And I think, that's my perception of XDR, and taking it out of the technology realm, which is, it's a piece of technology. I get that, but it's allowing me to bring in all the bits and pieces that I want to, or that I can potentially, to have that holistic approach to securing clients. And that's what I want. I'm okay with asking for help, especially if I'm out of my depth or I don't know what I'm doing, because that's only going to be detrimental to the client in the end. And I think something like XDR, it's going to enrich everyone. Again, this is just my perception of what XDR is.
And, for me, I agree with that. XDR, it's going to enrich everyone. It's partnerships, right? That's what we want. We want to push partnerships and collaboration rather than working in silo. And then ultimately, it's creating automation and response. That's the back part, right? So yeah, when you look at it from an intangible standpoint, it's pushing collaboration within the security space, which historically can be kind of a cloak and dagger space. So I always like to see additional partnerships. You go to our page, huge list of partners, and that's awesome because it's showing, like Mandiant, like some of those other big partners that we're working together as opposed to working against each other. We can even work together in similar like micro spaces. We don't have to be collaborating at each other's ends. We can just say, what are our pros? What are our cons? And yes, XDR is a push towards collaboration.
One of the interesting things about the Mandiant CrowdStrike announcement is the fact that, and maybe selfishly for me, because I like CrowdStrike, you have a big company like Mandiant saying, hey, we want to work with these people to do what we do. And to me, it's a very good endorsement of the product and capability.
Yeah. And Mandiant, I encourage everybody to go check out Forrester, go check out Gartner, see where Mandiant places, see where CrowdStrike places.
Everyone's always top right corner.
There's certain things where we may not be, the most alpha placement, but that might not be entirely where we play. But the point with Mandiant is Mandiant always has been the tip of the spear insofar as incident response there. So yeah, that's a huge validation point for us. That's been a long time in the working, so pretty happy about it.
So that's it for me on my end. Cameron, anything else you'd like to close out with?
No, appreciate you having me on. Final Parthian shot, XDR is taking dispersed data sources, putting in a single pane of glass, and creating automations on it. That's what I want people to drive home. So go check out the partner platform, reach out to your local rep. We want people to start to consider adoption with this. And of course, it's difficult to speak generically, but that's why I always say, you got a point of contact. They know your specifics. You have a unique security stack. You have a unique situation. Reach out to them and tell them you're interested and we'll get you working on it.
And I will say, I have never gone more than, I'd say, 45 minutes without a reply from CrowdStrike to any serious questions I have. And I think by now they know which ones are my serious questions.
Which are the serious questions? Well,
their staff is incredibly responsive. So do reach out. And if not, call me. I'll get you in touch with somebody.
You can call Shiva. Shiva will then call me and then we'll figure it out, right? We're here to help. So
I'll just turf you to Cameron or Nick.